Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for March 8th through 14th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 3 shows, and I listened to 3 books. First this week we have Kilt Trip. This is a book that takes place mostly in Edinburgh, although they do venture out into the Highlands and that type of thing as well. And although we do get dual perspectives, our main character in this one is a woman who works for this company that basically goes in and helps other travel companies attract more customers, fix whatever's going wrong in their itineraries so that they get more people coming on the tours and better ratings. As we meet her, she's just shown up in Edinburgh. This is the first time she's been here because she has family history that she's been kind of avoiding, and she's trying to find this one specific tour that she gave a fake name for that she's supposed to be on so she can give feedback about it. As she's pacing back and forth on this one street to find the way to get to the tour she's going to, I actually could picture exactly where she was because I used to give tours there. So obviously that aspect of this book was really going to speak to me. Now of course our other point of view character is the guy that's leading this tour. It turns out he's actually the son of the man who owns this operation, and he's eventually going to inherit it, and he thinks that they shouldn't have to change anything because what they do is really from the heart. In fact, he did try to change things once and it went really badly, and he figures he doesn't want to add things like trips to St. Andrews for golf courses. He doesn't want to do any of that. He wants to stick to the local vendors the company's been going to for 30 years. He wants to stick to these very small places. And although he's initially very attracted to her, once he finds out why she's there, he's very upset about it. Obviously, since where this is set is my favorite city and the fact that it's set around tour guides, which is what I used to do while I was in that city, this was basically made for me. It wasn't absolutely perfect, but I did have a good time with it. Speaking of traveling, the next thing I read is a guide for the Cotswold Way. This is a walking path in the south of England that is about 163 kilometers long, if I'm remembering correctly. And this was basically a guide on how to get there, where to stay in different locations when you stay along this path, different pubs and points of interest, and a lot of maps so you don't end up missing a signpost while you're on your way. The version I was reading was edition 4, which was from 2019, but I looked it up and there is an edition 5 from 2024, so I've ordered that for myself because I am planning on actually doing this one day, hopefully later this year. But I will be doing it by myself because Chad does not like walking as much as I do. The other book I read with my eyeballs this week is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? This is a book that was on my 40 before 40 TBR and I finally got around to reading it. This is also the basis for the movie Blade Runner, and if you're like me and you think about Blade Runner, you go, I know I've seen that movie, and I know that there were androids, and I know that there was somebody trying to find androids. Do I remember anything else really? I think there was a scene where they were talking in the rain, and there was probably a shot of birds flying. And that's about all I remember of that movie, and yeah, I can see why. So we follow a couple of different characters in this one. The first one is what's known as a bounty hunter. Basically, it is his job to work for the police force, but also he's sent off when they figure out where these rogue Andes are, and he gives them a test to make sure they're actually androids before he retires them. He's been given a big assignment because somebody else was on this big assignment and they got injured, so they're in the hospital. But also he's spending a lot of time being very preoccupied with the fact that he only owns an electric sheep and he wishes he owned a real animal because that's like a show of social class and wealth, and most people have left Earth by this point, which by the way is early January of 1992. So I would have been 5 years old. But his job keeps him on Earth. He and his wife also have these things at home where you can basically dial what kind of emotion you want. And there's this person on the radio and TV basically 24 hours a day that is always talking to people. And then there's this thing that's kind of like a religion, but it didn't really give me enough for it to actually make sense. Oh, and he coined a term in this book, which is kipple, and then used the term too many times throughout the book. Oh, and I also ran into booped boobily writing, which was not great. It was going so well until I ran into that. I can't remember the first line that I ran into, but the second one I ran into was she had breasts that smile, and I was like, what? I came away from this, and this might actually be intentional, with what even is the point, and if you can't tell who's real and who's not, what even is the point of life? But then this also has this weird backing of he's constantly wanting to buy animals, and it's like, what's the point of doing that very social, outward-facing thing if there's really no point to doing it? I don't know, I just think this was kind of a mess. Speaking of messy, let's move on to what I watched this week. I watched the first 2 episodes of the Celebrity Traitors. I'd never actually seen any of the Traitors before, but we were visiting family and my cousin really wanted to show it to us, and I wish it was on BritBox because I would have binged the rest of this because this is so funny. If you're not familiar with this concept, in this case there are, I think, 38 celebrities, something like that, and they all come to this big castle, and then 3 of them are picked to be the traitors, and they're basically trying to sabotage things, and everybody else is trying to figure out who the traitors are. Now, the first 2 people that were picked to be traitors definitely can do the straight face thing, are definitely pretty strategic, whereas the 3rd one is somebody I know from RuPaul's Drag Race, and he doesn't look like he can keep a secret to save his life, and he gets very, very sweaty when he's got a secret, and it's just really fun to watch him because at some point he's going to muck it up. Or maybe he won't, and we'll all be pleasantly surprised. I don't know, I'm only 2 episodes in. The other thing about the traitors is they have to slowly kill people off, and they're all playing for charities. Definitely wildly entertaining. Everybody in the room was really getting into it when we were watching it. We laughed a lot. And now I'm going to have to try to figure out how to watch the rest of it. Speaking of something that I was able to watch all of because there's only 4 episodes, I watched Deadwater Fell. This takes place in a small Scottish town on the day where there's a bike race and then a Kiley, and then at the end of that day something terrible happens to this prominent family, which I will not ruin for you, but it is very, very tragic. And then we're caught up trying to figure out how exactly this happened and who can people trust. Because it looks like it's going one way, but is it really going that way, or is it another way? And do people have secrets that will be uncovered? Yes, of course they do. I very much enjoyed this one. The other thing I watched is most of the first 2 series of In the Footsteps of Killers. This is based on true crime stories where it's these 2 people, one of them I know from Silent Witness, Amelia Fox, and then a professor, David Wilson, discussing old cold cases from the UK and then actually going to the places where they happened and interviewing people if they're still around and trying to figure out what could have possibly happened. Of course, there are only so far some of these investigations could go, so there was a point where they figured out, you know what, there's probably a good chance that this body was like put in this river specifically right here, because there had been a tip about somebody having a wheelie bag and then going and actually throwing it in the canal and then leaving. And I thought to myself, this show has enough money for all these drone shots as they're doing this case, but they don't have enough money to dredge exactly where you think the body is, which I guess is outside of the scope of the show. There's also a couple of points where if you think about it too much, the writing is a little bit schlocky. For example, in one of the last episodes I watched, Amelia's like, oh, and this case has never been solved before? And I'm like, yeah, Amelia, you're only ever talking about cold cases on this show. Obviously. They also do a lot of shots where it seems like they're calling each other on the phone, and it's just kind of these shots to narrate what they're doing next in the case, but also I'm pretty sure they're not actually talking to each other, it's just a device that's being used. Regardless, I am finding the show really, really interesting, and there was a point in one of the last couple of episodes I watched where I went, oh, holy crap, I remember that name because I remember the case that the guy is talking about, because that guy was actually played by Martin Freeman in a whole miniseries I watched. So when I heard his name, I was like, why does that name sound vaguely familiar? And then he started describing the case that's actually from that miniseries, where he had this guy and the guy was taking him to this one body, and he pointed out where the body was, and they were going to go back to the police station. He's like, would you like a second body? And I was like, wait, Steve Fulcher, oh my goodness, that's actually the guy. I got really excited about this. On to the audiobooks I listened to. The first one is called Nicked. This one took place in either the 11th or the 12th century in Italy, or what is now known as Italy. And this is all about a heist to steal the bones of St. Nicholas, because they figure if they bring those back to this very small village that has the plague, maybe the plague will go away. Having the bones or relics of saints is definitely a practice I had heard of before but hadn't thought too much about. And yeah, it's definitely gross, especially because in modern days we're like, why would you do that? Going into this, I didn't know a lot about this time frame of history, and I feel like if I knew more about this time frame, I would have enjoyed this more. I did enjoy it to an extent. We have this holy man who supposedly had a dream about St. Nicholas the night before, and his church basically said, oh, that's enough for us to actually think that you should actually be on this journey and go get the bones with these other guys who are definitely going to do this for us for a good price. Because this treasure hunter was going to do it for a different city, but that city already has some relic, and he figures that if this city pays him a little bit more, he'll just get it for them. And then of course I was delightfully surprised that a romance ensued between these two characters. I think my biggest problem with this is there was a lot of action, but it was actually really hard for me to picture all of this action, so either it needed to be written a little bit better or the scene needed to be described a little bit better, and then I would actually be able to see what was going on in my head a little bit more. Of course, this could be a me problem. Second audiobook I listened to was Done and Dusted, which is the first in the Blue Rebel series. This is a romance series between this girl who grew up in this very small ranching town, but she left because she was actually doing like barrel jumping circuits and that type of thing. But unbeknownst to her family, she had a really bad fall a while back and she hasn't really been able to ride since. So she packed up her entire life and came back to her small town. In her small town, we have her best friend, we have her dad and her two brothers who work on a ranch. And then there's this guy that's always been kind of around because he's really good friends with his brothers. But of course, he's kind of off limits to her, which is definitely what he's also thinking because we get his perspective as well. And he's like, oh no, my best friend would kill me if I did anything with his sister. However, they're obviously very attracted to each other. Things progress from there. This was good. I really enjoyed how these characters supported each other. We obviously got to see him supporting her a lot more because she had a more pressing issue to do with the synopsis of this book, but also we got to see her support him at one point as well, which was just lovely. There were two characters we were introduced to in this book where I was like, oh, these two characters are definitely going to have a book in the future, and it turns out that is book 3 and the other brother is getting a book first, so I look forward to eventually reading those. The third audiobook I listened to this week is actually because I saw the author being interviewed on Hot Ones and I went, oh my god, she has kids books, I'm definitely gonna read at least one of them. And that book is the Millicent Quibb School of Etiquette for Young Ladies of Mad Science by Kate Mckinnon. I adore Kate Mckinnon and she's so wacky and weird, and I was just like, if she wrote kids books, I'm gonna want to read them. This book is about 3 orphans called the Porch Sisters, and they are living with adoptive aunts and uncles and cousins, but they're not treated all too well, and every time they're put in an etiquette school they are eventually kicked out of it because instead of wanting to learn things like how to sit on a fainting couch, they've got their own little hobbies and they're very smart in their own ways, but nobody really pays attention to that. Once they're kicked out of the last etiquette school in town, they get this invitation, and nobody's ever heard of this new etiquette school, but when they go there they find out that the headmistress isn't Marjorie Questions, it's Millicent Quibb, who to this point has been pitched as a town boogeyman, but she's actually a mad scientist and she does want to open this school and she does really want these pupils, specifically because they're already showing talents in different versions of mad science. Adventures ensue. It's incredibly wacky. If you listen to the book, it's also read by Kate Mckinnon, but if you read the book physically, there are a bunch of diagrams that are definitely referred to. And apparently there is a way to access that PDF if you're reading it from the library via Overdrive or Libby. I just didn't bother doing that because she actually does a fairly decent job of describing the diagrams, so I didn't feel like I needed to go look them up, especially because I'm often listening to the book while I'm out and about. But I just wanted to let you know that both of those options are there. This is actually the first in a series, and I am very interested to see where it goes from here, because things were very dire when we left these siblings. That's it for this week. If you've watched or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!